All right, so welcome back to the Breaking Bread Village, and my guest today, Carolina. So please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about just who you are.
Hello, I'm Carolina Donoso. I am originally from Brazil. I was born there. I grew up moving around. I lived in 6 different countries before ending up in the US. I am an artist, and it was a long journey to get here,
Yeah, which we're going to talk
which we'll
about.
talk about, but I'm
Yeah.
happy to say that that's what I do. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome, awesome. So I know when you and I first met, when we first kind of had a conversation, I
Mm-hmm.
know I kind of asked you about your experiences living outside of the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
I know people who grew up and never left their city, right? Never left their state,
Yeah.
etc. So how is it, or was it for you, I guess I should say, coming to the States? Like, living abroad in different
Yeah.
places. How was it, getting acclimated to the United States?
It was probably the biggest culture shock that I ever experienced, which was really, interesting. Because before that, well, I lived in South America. Well, I started off in South America. That's where my family's from, so that's the culture that I'm most used to.
Sure.
And then we moved to Europe. We moved back to South America, and then we moved to Asia. And so, but it was also always in international communities
Sure.
and cities, big cities, which usually has more diversity.
Hmm.
And so moving to the U.S., which was always looked as when you're outside, everyone thinks the U.S. thinks that the U.S. is the center of the world, right? And so it was really funny because now I'm like in the center of the world, right? And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, people really don't look outside of here.
Yeah.
And why is that? And I mean, the US is, the beginning for a lot of different things, but it was always very interesting to not be able to relate as much with people
How so?
because well, I mean, not everyone had the same background as me.
Sure. Sure.
And I was used to, at least going to places where either people were half something and half another thing, or
Yeah.
like had lived somewhere else, or if they grew up somewhere, they were still aware of different countries,
Sure.
and they were still aware of different cultures. And it was very celebrated in those places. Like all of the schools that I went to had International Day, or um, it was just more known.
Sure.
And coming here, it was like a big change to I'm different. I found out, well, it's actually really interesting because, I never thought of myself as like, um, well, I always knew that I was like a Latin woman, but I
Hmm.
never realized it so much until I got here. Because I think it's this need of categorizing that we have here in the U.S. We're not even categorizing. It's like people trying to find their niche, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, I was always like, well, do I even fit in with the Latin people? Because they don't have the background that I have. And like when I'm in that situation, they also don't think of me as like a pure Brazilian or pure Argentinian, which I never really was.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, so coming here was a great opportunity for me to grow,
Yeah.
to realize my privileges, realize my positionality going back home, and to also just realize that most of the world isn't all international. Most of the world, this is kind of a microcosm of like, most people don't leave home,
Yeah.
and what it means to leave home, and what the responsibilities of sharing, or that I think, but also respecting that not everyone has to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. I find it very interesting because
Mm-hmm.
United States does have a presence, right?
Yeah.
And this idea that we are the best, the greatest, and when you go places, people kind of honor that, right? They're like, oh man, Americans, they assume that all of us are rich and
Yeah.
all these different ideas. And it's so interesting, especially with what's going on in the world right now.
Yeah.
Like people are not
Yeah.
really thinking that way anymore across the world. So, you know, I mean, even when I think about people being bilingual, you know, and how sometimes here, not all people, but I know even growing up, people were kind of made fun of or ridiculed or made to feel
Yeah.
like they were uh slow or
Well,
not educated if they spoke a different language,
yeah.
which I found so interesting because that's actually really
Yeah. I
really
mean,
good, right?
it's interesting because I always grew up struggling with language
Mm-hmm.
because I was born in Brazil speaking Portuguese at home, but then I moved to Argentina, so I was speaking Spanish with because my family is also half Argentinian, so
Okay.
we're speaking Spanish, but then I'm going to school for English, and then we moved to Switzerland. I'm doing like German.
Yeah.
It's for like a little kid that's like 4 already.
Oh yeah.
And then going to Italy and then learning Italian, forgetting Portuguese, forgetting English. And like when I moved to Brazil, it was really freaking hard because that was the first time I had to write in Portuguese.
Oh yeah.
And so I was catching up,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was losing all my English.
Yeah.
To the point where when I was moving to Japan, I had an accent, like full on accent, and was terrible at writing. And so before I moved to the US, or the summer when I moved to the US, I started going to summer schools.
Okay.
So every summer, I went for 3 years. Summer, I would go for 5 weeks to like a boarding school to like improve my English and to study more, or catch up. Feel like I'm always catching up.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's why I was never school smart, because my ways of learning was always so confused.
Yeah.
And it was so annoying because people would see my grades and I would just feel like I wasn't smart, but I knew I was smart.
Sure.
So I'm like, I know I've lived and I've done all these things and I can speak all these languages, and half these people can't. And I'm like, I am smart. It's just so annoying that this system, educational system, just won't reflect it. Like the SATs, oh my God, like it was awful.
I have a whole thought process on.
It's like, how are you gonna evaluate a human being off of scores that are first multiple choice? Like there's zero interpretation in anything.
Right.
And so yeah, it's very interesting. And it's interesting that you mentioned that because like living here, I didn't do as many language classes that I used to.
Sure.
And so I am now going back to relearning Italian that I used to speak when I was younger, because I was just like, it's something that I always loved. To be able to say that I could speak different languages.
Sure.
And from living here for so long, I kind of lost it. Like I miss hearing different things. And so I'm going back to learning that, and then I'm trying to do some French as well. But yeah, one thing at a time, but I'm also taking both classes at once. So
wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. But I mean, even hearing you right now, I would never ever guess that you struggled with English. I mean, so
yeah. I have spelling bees that ask for my parents' signature that I never got signed.
Oh yeah.
But I saved them, and I'm like, why did I save them? So I could look back and be like, girl could write now.
Yeah. No, I think that's great.
Yeah.
Why do you think exploring and embracing and learning about different cultures and diversity is so important?
Well, I mean, I think that's the things that make us connect in a way. And I think that it's very interesting that a lot of times we think we're all very different. And the more you learn about different cultures, you realize that there's specific bases that make us the same.
Yeah.
And also the differences are just fascinating. And we can learn so much from each other, and from, being able to see how one culture does the same thing, and and be like, wow, I'm not limited.
Mm-hmm.
Like the world is huge.
Exactly.
We're always able to gain something new. And like you end up doing certain things at home that you don't even realize, but they're from the origins are from a different culture.
Yeah.
Like as simple as taking off your shoes when you get home.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
like a culture of, you know, cleanliness, for example, but that comes from, you know, being in Asia.
Right.
Like in Brazil, they do that too, but it's not as common. But like in Japan, you take your shoes off way before you get into someone's home,
Right.
out of respect.
Yeah.
And you learn so much about respect when you learn about other people's culture.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I don't do it the same way that you do, but I get why you do what you do.
Yeah.
And being able to have that type of understanding that there's no superiority, you know, there's no, I do it better, but you do it differently, and that's okay.
And that's okay, and it should be celebrated and
It
embraced.
is, yeah, it should
You know,
be.
and it's funny because I remember, I've broken bread with a lot of different type of people and
Right.
cultures and religions, and it's just so interesting how even the smallest thing. I remember when a child very close to me, we were all eating, and we were eating with our hands, and we had a guest there that was not accustomed to that, and I remember them kind of almost like reprimanding this child, like, use your fork. And, I had to explain that culturally, I mean, across the world, people eat with their hands. They share bowls and they all eat out the same bowl. And it's such a, almost spiritual experience, right?
100%.
And so it's really interesting how people, based on what they know and their limited, right, knowledge, really just don't get it. Instead of saying, oh, why are you doing that?
Instead of asking the questions, you just cancel it.
Yeah.
It is really interesting because, you know, how much more if you look at it through the lens of curiosity,
Sure.
or just, straight up curiosity.
Yeah.
How much can you get excited? It like brings you curiosity. The word itself is like,
yeah,
you know, how
yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
And so if we looked at differences that way, you know, we would learn so much and we would connect so much more.
Oh yeah.
It's like it's an honor to share my traditions. You know, I think it's a beautiful thing. I think everyone loves sharing those things. And so yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah, and I think about it even, right now with the climate that's going on in the United States, right? How people don't want to talk about different history or different walks of life, right?
Yeah.
And how people are almost demonizing learning about different ways of life, right? It's really interesting to me because I just always wonder, what is the fear in that? What is the fear in knowing? And of course, history always exposes truth, right?
Yeah.
All of our history exposes truth, and we all have darkness and light within our history, right? And so I really admire people who are not afraid to step out and learn something new, and understand too that, I'm awesome, but I'm not everything, right? It's other people that make this thing go around, and we have to understand that. So I want to get into, your journey to art, right? You are an artist and you do amazing work.
I actually want to circle back to what you last said.
Yeah, please do.
Because it's really interesting. For a long time, I didn't tell people about my background of like where I grew up, because I always like, or at least in Midland, I wouldn't, because then I'd feel like they would assume a lot. Like, I don't know why. If I felt bad, like I felt bad sharing, because I knew that a lot of people didn't have the same opportunities. And so I would know that they would automatically put me in a box of like, she like first super privileged, second like just this annoying rich girl type of vibe. And I didn't want people to put me in those boxes. So I would always, or like I also assumed that they didn't care, or they would just already think that I would be this thing. So I didn't want to share because they already assumed things about me.
That's interesting.
So
and
yeah, for a long time I wouldn't introduce myself as like, hey, I'm Carolina, I lived in these places. Although I do that, but I stopped doing that for a while because I was like, well, to what point does that define me? but also kind of defines me a lot, you
Well,
know?
yeah, and
So
that's the beauty.
yeah,
And unless
yeah,
people can see that, then yes, I
yeah,
can see how that could be
yeah,
kind of terrifying, right?
yeah,
But that is the beauty of, like, our experiences literally make us who we are,
yeah,
and
exactly.
we should be able to share those
Yeah,
without that fear. But I understand.
yeah. Especially living in the US now for 10 years. It's
Mm.
like part of me is like, now I have to accept the fact that I'm also American.
Yeah,
Like, oh
yeah,
my God,
yeah,
that's a lot. Like,
yeah,
uh, because, part of my identity was so stuck in, I move a lot.
yeah.
That's my identity.
Oh, yeah.
And now I'm here,
Kind of plan it now.
kind of planted. Well, I did move a lot in the US.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying I'm a, but yeah, it was almost interesting to, because I would talk to, well, I had someone tell me, like, well, you're American, you're kind of a Michigander, and I'm like, it's a hard pill to
Yeah.
swallow,
Yeah.
But then I was also like, look, I'm a Michigander, but I'm also all of these other things,
Yes, and
and
yes, that is
like,
it.
don't put me in a box,
Yeah.
but recognize that there's a lot of layers to
But
this.
like you said a few minutes ago, that
Mm-hmm.
as humans, we
Mm-hmm.
like to do that, right? We like to put people into
Yeah.
these little compartments that we
Yeah.
can understand and
Mm-hmm.
kind of grasp,
Yeah.
and not realizing, like, oh, it's okay to have these different
Right.
multi-dimensional
Right.
parts of us.
That's why it almost feels weird to be like, hey, I'm from Michigan, when I'm out of state.
Yeah.
Because I'd rather say I'm from Brazil because that has more to it. Because
Mhm.
if I, like, it's so hard to introduce yourself.
Yeah.
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 Like, just one one adjective, that's you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what are you going to pick?
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah.
No, I do it's a little I guess activity that I do in the classes when I go in there, and I have them pick an object, one object that they think sums them up, right?
Yeah.
So people will say, like, a book or a
Yeah.
CD player, like, people say all kind
Yeah.
of random things, right? But I mean, that one thing doesn't define us, and that's the point, is that
Yeah.
there's no way for us to define ourselves. Sometimes even in the words, right? Sometimes
Yeah.
it's like just the experience of us,
Yeah.
like being in our space, for people to really understand who we are, because it's really hard to put words to it sometimes. So
Yeah. I mean, and that's art.
that is, and
That's art.
look at this segue right
Yeah.
into the art
Yeah.
part of it. So tell me, when you found your love for art, when did you realize that this is something that you want to do?
I think, well, I always did do art growing up. All of the schools that I had art in it, and I guess that's a language that you don't need to translate.
Yeah.
And so I always did it. Whether it was, dancing, or making videos. I'd literally gather my family and make music videos. And I was like, damn, I could be a director. And yeah, art kind of came in a lot of different formats for me. And always growing up going to museums, a lot of museums. And my dad would be like, well, you have to do a report about what you learned.
He would make you do that.
He would always threaten us, but we never did it.
Yeah.
But he was like, pay attention, read.
No, I love that though.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
It was really great, but I hated museums.
Yeah.
So,
no, I
I'm
love
like,
it. No, yeah. I love it. I love that your dad did that. I mean, it's important.
Yeah.
To pay attention to where you're at, like, be present, right?
Yeah.
And really take that in. So
yeah,
that's cool.
He would make us read, and then read beforehand. Like, we would go to a city and be like, okay, what's the city? Like, what's the history behind it?
Oh wow, that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, no, he's really great. Yeah.
No, I mean,
as a kid, it was super annoying.
Well, of course, I was just about to say, I'm sure when you were really young, you're like, I just want to go to Philadelphia. I don't want to have to read about it. But
but it was really useful. It's a life lesson of, like, what are the spaces you're going into and why.
Yeah.
And are you paying attention? And I think that with art, I always also would go into these museums, and I felt really tired, or I was always like, I don't actually have recollection of certain museums that gave me interest, which is something interesting. Because in some ways I even think that the art world, or maybe, I think that the art world, to translate history, museums are history.
Yeah.
It's not what's going on.
Right.
And I was always interested in, the shocking or
Yeah.
the things that would grasp your attention or make you think in a more obvious way. I mean, maybe because I was a kid that didn't want to think too deeply
Yeah.
into an art piece.
Yeah.
And so making art, I was never the best at making art. Like, I
Well,
remember
that's
being in school and like being, wow, these like fifth graders can make a hyper realistic drawing right now. What are you doing?
but that's the beauty of art.
Yeah,
Is that, I mean,
yeah.
who gets to define who's
Right.
the
And
best?
I think
Right.
that a lot of the technical classes, I took technical classes the whole time I was in school and
Mhm.
until high school, where that was the first time that I was told to do what I wanted.
Oh.
Where I got to choose a theme.
Mm.
I got to create a portfolio for myself for IB art. So it was, that's when I think I've actually realized there was something there for me. Which my parents even saw before that, because they sent me to a summer school for art.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that.
So, but when did you find that, like, this is what I want to do? This is what.
So this is what I want to do. So I always had this vision.
Okay.
I always had this vision of I want to create a magical space. Like it's in my head. I want to be able to combine all senses and make art that creates this experience, and that was probably during high school.
Okay.
Where it started to become more of an understanding. I always knew, like, even doing video work, I always knew that I had some sort of talent in in directing or in creating a story and being part of I don't know, like, we would do shows. We always did, like, during Christmas times, we would always do musicals to our family. Like, all those presentations.
Yeah.
So there was always something, like, storytelling or grabbing your attention. And in high school was when I was like, okay, I have this idea in my head. I want to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know how I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Still not 100% sure.
Well, most of us creators are like that.
Right.
It's like, I think I see what I want to do, but hey, how I get there.
Yeah, and I think that I was actually watching a video earlier today that people don't push you to be versatile.
Mm.
They push you to be good at one medium.
Mm-hmm.
And I was watching the video, and it was a dancer, and she was talking about, like, the biggest skill is to be versatile, to be able to do all the things. And so I always thought about how would I combine my passion for dance, my passion for music, my passion for movement into literally 2D things, and also 3D things, and making a space where there could be a dancer.
Yeah, you can move that over if you need to. Yeah.
Where there could be a dancer in a museum, like, making this experience.
Yeah.
And so I think all the years was just collecting what I loved or understanding of what made them interesting to me.
Sure. Yeah.
And during high school, I was able to explore the 2D, 3D realm, or the themes, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So I picked the theme of contact. That was my IB art theme, where I explored what it is that contact is. It's, emotional contact, physical contact, the depths of how we feel closeness as human beings and connection.
Yeah.
And so that's something, I think that's a reoccurring theme that I've always had.
Because your work is very bold. It's very bold. Yeah, no, I mean, I remember when I first saw it, it's like, wow, because I love color. Anybody knows me knows I love color.
Yeah.
And I love statements. I like to make a statement. And I think your work does that. And so tell me more about your creations. Like, what, because I mean, you see some people who do a lot of, like, nature stuff, or you see people who do abstract. Tell me why you chose to be so bold in your delivery.
Well, I could not sit down and paint a setting.
Yeah.
Like that to me, I think for one, maybe I don't have the skill, but
Or maybe you do and it just doesn't.
yeah, it just doesn't call me.
Yeah.
I just, for me, I think that art, or I think that I am here to say things, or I don't want to waste people's time, I think. And I think the reason why I use bold colors is because, you're supposed to be adding to the world, not supposed to dim it.
I like that.
And to me, I think that it's a choice. You could either bring some darkness into the world, because art is an outside entity. It's a creation, right. And so you have to be really careful about what you create, because you're putting it out there to people. And I think the statements are that I want to be direct.
Yeah.
Because I never got a direct art piece. I grew up going to museums all my life, and I never felt a piece that spoke to me.
Resonated, yeah.
In a way that was so upfront.
Oh, gotcha.
Or not, I don't know. I think I'm still trying to figure out how to best do that, because I know there's a lot of mystery that's interesting, but to me, I'm also like, I think that it's important to make it clear, why you're saying what you're saying. And that's why I say the bold statements that I say, because I want people to feel those things.
Are you speaking to yourself sometimes in your work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's, to me, it's like either it's like my like two angel and devil on the shoulder. It's like they're having conversations, and I'm that's how I do it when I write. Sometimes when I write, it feels like I'm writing to something, so it's really interesting. But the art pieces are more honest sometimes in my writing.
Tell me how. Yeah.
Because I just put it all on canvas, or I just write on the canvas exactly what I'm feeling, as ugly as it can be, or as beautiful as it can be.
Sure.
Because it's like a part of me needs to say it, and if I don't say it, I'll feel like there's no point of making anything. And it's usually a conversation with myself. It's like my higher self knows how to respond to me. Yeah. And so it's a lot about the stick figures. Like the stick figure is either a reflection of a conversation I once had, or they're a commentary in my head towards my life. Oh yeah. It's like, if I'm making a decision and I'm feeling fearful, I hear my little voice, or like my little stick figure telling me, like, be bold, like just do it. Because I know all these things, it's all in me. And so sometimes they're just, I call them the smarter versions.
Yeah, no, I think we all have those voices. So I find that very interesting, that the voices that kind of pump you up and celebrate you and motivate you, inspire you, you then take that voice, those words, and then you put it onto canvas. Yeah.
They usually come from, I'll be interested in a subject and I'll listen to a book, an audiobook, or have a conversation with someone and identify certain themes. They're all mostly self-reflective, but this is usually under a theme of something I'm interested in. Yeah. That usually pertains to humanity, like I'm interested in how we can improve and how we can evolve. Yeah. And then I create a base, and then I start drawing and I start creating. The conversation keeps going to farther and farther. And so that's actually something I wanted to create a little video on, to be able to explain the way that it comes about. Yeah.
No, I think that's pretty cool and very powerful, actually. I'm always intrigued by artists, right? And artistry could go, it's just such a spectrum, right? What artists look like and who they are and what they do, right? The work that they do. And so, because spoken word, I think about spoken word, poetry, dance, all of that, musicians, all that's artistry that I just love. So, I want to ask you this in closing. So as you mentioned, you have privilege, right?
Yeah.
In regards to parents that supported you, or could put you into art schools and
Yeah.
different things like that, which is great. And
Mhm.
I tell people all the time, we all have privilege in something, right?
Yeah.
We all have privileges
Right.
somewhere, somehow,
Mhm.
in different spaces. But with that said, what would you say to a young artist, or
Mhm.
even, I mean, not even a young artist, but
Yeah.
however age, right?
Mhm.
Whatever age, what would you say to them that may not have that support system,
Mhm.
or but know they want to do it and
Yeah.
they are really passionate about it? What would you
Yeah.
say to someone?
I would say that everything's going to happen from within you. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you have, if you want to do something, you have to do it,
Yeah.
because no one else is going to do it for you. That's something that art taught me, that
Mm-hmm.
although, I have all the support, but nothing's going to get created if I don't do it.
Exactly.
If I don't start putting myself out there, if I don't have a conversation with someone about my art, if I don't tell people to follow my art Instagram, or if I don't create a website or
Mm-hmm.
go online
Yeah.
and figure out how to do it. And so, I think a lot of times we're not told to dream,
Yeah.
and we're not told that we're allowed to be that person that can achieve a dream. And to the people out there,
Mm-hmm.
you are allowed to dream, and you're allowed to go after it. And sometimes it's recognizing that you can, and you're allowed, and you are one of those chosen people, because we're all chosen people. It's just we decide if we are going to act upon it or not.
Yeah. If you want to walk in that, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's a scary road to not know what's next, but at the same time, you can baby step it one step at a time
Yeah.
to create, you know, the life you want.
Yeah.
And
Because none of us know what the next step is.
yeah,
Even, I mean,
exactly.
even when you think about people who work in the corporate, right?
Right.
And everybody
I think
looks at
they
that.
think they know.
Yeah,
They,
well, and then people think that, okay, because it's safe
yeah.
in a sense, and I this is not a dig towards, it's just in my
Yeah.
mind, right? Like, where
Mm-hmm.
it's this safety, where it's like, I have this
Yeah.
job, I can go to it every day,
Mm-hmm.
but people get laid off,
Yeah.
companies close down, so
Yeah.
each day is a
Exactly.
surprise, each day is a gift, right?
Exactly.
So how
Mm-hmm.
you, because I did corporate for a couple of years, I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
was okay, it just wasn't my
Yeah.
my thing,
Yeah.
I'm like, where's the color in here? I needed some color. It was very dull and very robotic for me, and so we all march differently, and it's
Right.
okay. We all have our own
Yeah.
tunes and our own
Of
beats that we
course.
march to. So I really just like to encourage people who want to, like you
Yeah.
said, dream, because dreams can become reality. And I think
Yeah.
people
I
miss that
mean,
sometimes.
well, it's really interesting. Well, if you should watch the TED Talk, not TED Talk. It's a video. It's on the should and the must.
Oh yeah, send it to me. I would
Yeah,
love to. I like
I'll
stuff
send
like
it to
that.
you. And in the end, it talks about how, so this woman, she starts off by having this dream of like a blank space, and
Mm-hmm.
then she ends up being able to find this blank studio, and like this dream starts becoming a reality.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes to a piano show, and she's sitting next to this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they're watching the show, and this guy is loving the piano show. And in the end, she asks the guy, like, oh, have you ever played? You seem to be an expert. And he's like, no, but I had this dream
Mm.
of me playing, and he never played. It's like one of those things that we have hints in our mind of things we want to do.
Yeah.
And it really just comes down to just doing it. Or
You have to.
you just have to either, online we have so much we could do.
Yeah.
Talk
Yeah.
to people that do things, and it just remember why you're doing it in the first place. It's
And
for your happiness. It's not supposed to be. If you don't want to make it a commercial thing, don't do it. But just
yeah,
do the art that makes
take
you
that
happy.
first step. And that's the thing,
Yeah.
is that, that's one thing that I'm really adamant about in my
Mm-hmm.
life, is that I always know there's a Z. Like, there's
Yeah.
always a Z. I
Mm-hmm.
don't care if you started at A,
Mm-hmm.
at B, at M, wherever.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a Z, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just always, how do you get there? There's
Yeah.
always a way. If someone else has done it, it's possible, right?
Yeah.
There's always this possibility that
Mm-hmm.
it's out there, but you have to take that first step. And that's how I live my whole life. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I dream,
Mm-hmm.
and then I act. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? I visualize,
Mm-hmm.
dream, and
Mm-hmm.
then I act. And you'd be surprised what kind of greatness comes out of that when you, and how good you feel, right? When you dream something and then it's like
happening. It
yes,
starts happening. Like,
it's almost like holy, like yeah, like I'm a little overwhelmed because it's like, wait a minute, this is actually happening.
Yeah.
So you're grateful, but it's also a little bit.
You're kind of like, wow.
Yeah.
What, I'm like, I gotta be careful what I dream. I need to dream, but yeah, and that's the thing.
No,
it's
I think that's beautiful.
It's all possible.
It is. It is. And if nobody walks away from anything else but that,
yeah, it's all possible.
It's all possible.
They're coming. The dreams are coming to you for a reason.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what to do with it, just try.
Just take that step.
Some people take the class. Talk to that person. Use a different color to draw, or I don't know, those simple things.
Well, because I've tried to, like, I love art, right? And so I would see people make these beautiful pictures, and I would get my paint. I have tons of paint. I have so much paint at home and brushes, right? Because I'm always like, because it's therapeutic for me. Yeah. And I try to do all these beautiful things, and I'm like, why does my pictures always come out like this green muck? Like, what is happening? And I remember I was laughing with someone about it. That's an artist. And I said, oh, yeah, da, da, da. And they said, well, do a couple and then let it dry. Yeah. Right? Yeah. I'm like, duh. Right? Yeah. But in my mind, I just see people doing this, and it just looks so like this steady flow.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. It's like, that's the fake news. You know, it's not. Yeah. You don't go from never drawing to drawing the best thing in the world.
In my mind, though, I dreamt that I could.
Yeah, but that means that you're on your way.
I'm on my way, but I'm not quite there yet.
You're not there yet. You can.
Yes.
It's baby steps as well. You know, it's like, you know, it's taking a class. Asking for some advice. Sharing
that dream, because I shared that with someone and said, I really want this artwork to come out nice. Why am I always turning into like this green muck? And they said, well, when you do that part, let it dry, and then you add. I'm like, in my mind, I didn't even think that way, because I just was focused on Z instead of figuring out the steps to get there.
Exactly. It's I was teaching this like art courage class at the Saginaw Art Museum, and this lady hadn't painted something. She had something in mind, but she hadn't painted it, and you know, she was so scared of doing it. But we just walked through step by step, and so it's okay to hold someone's hand. Yeah, it's okay to be like, I need some help, and that helped me. You know. Yeah. And she painted the freaking thing, and it looks great.
Beautiful. That's getting past the ego and saying, you know, I need help and I don't know everything. We don't know everything. We need each other. And that goes back to what we kind of started with, is that connectivity, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We all need each other.
We do.
We need to learn from each other. We need to glean from each other. And it makes us better people when we understand people and when we're understood.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the beauty. Yeah. Right, and when we're understood.
And when we're understood.
That was a good one.
Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. This is great. And you will be speaking at an upcoming event for Serving Hope and Breaking Bread about this very thing. So I appreciate you and what you're doing, what you bring to the community. We need people from all different backgrounds. So celebrate that, which I'm glad that you are. And, you know, so until next time.
Until next time.
Yes.
Ciao.
Come break bread with me. Break bread and be free. Come break bread with me. Conversationally. Open your mind. Now is the time.